right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Stat Luba Podcast. I'm your host, Ian. We have our resident data expert, co-host Desh as well. And this week we are graced with Freetown's finest, Mr. Tom Bongai, coming all the way from West Africa, given his insights as we do a little bit of a deep dive into the reign of Erik ten Hag, Sir Erik ten Hag. Oh wait, no, sorry, he didn't get knighted like some previous managers. But yeah, given the news that this week Erik ten Hag's tenure at Manchester United has been cut short after having his contract extended another year this past summer. The club has seen enough, seeing Manchester United slip down to 14th place, -3 goal difference, 21st in Europa League, and with Sporting Lisbon manager Ruben Amorim on his way in. So just wanted to start off with some overall thoughts, Tom, on Erik ten Hag's tenure at Manchester United before we start diving in a bit. But over to you for your thoughts on his little over 2 seasons in charge of Manchester United.
I think the way you set the scene for his tenure at United is a bit unfair, because if you want to rate him, you need to bring it into context. You need to bring his 2.5 years into context. In his first year, I think he did pretty okay. Most of the goals that were set at the start of the season, he achieved it, taking us back to top 4, winning a trophy, which was pretty decent. And at that time, the football was decent. So it's kind of unfair to assume that his entire tenure has been a total disaster. And also, football is a result-based game. If you are not winning, it's inevitable for you to get sacked, especially for a big club like United. We can't get our managers to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons without really winning or doing anything. And we keep saying trust the process.
Let's keep the focus on where it belongs this week, okay? We're talking Manchester United.
Yeah. I think where his tenure went wrong are some of his signings. I think his signings and also injuries also to key players played a big role. And funny enough, I think his fight with Ronaldo, that was like the beginning of the end for him. Even though he had like the initial aftermath of it was good because he consolidated his power, and at the end of the season, he achieved most of the goals. But in the long run, everything Ronaldo said in that interview has been proven right.
The interview with Piers Morgan is what you're referring
to. Yeah. Even though he's can I curse? Are we allowed to curse? Even though Piers Morgan is kind of a, but everything Ronaldo said during that interview was pretty spot on.
I'm actually interested. Also, I'm interested now that you've brought this up on your take on this, because I remember when Ten Hag came in, it was before he even it was like his very first press conference, like when after he had signed with United, I think, or within that first initial period, before he even physically got there, somebody was asking him about how Cristiano Ronaldo fits in, and he was immediately he doesn't fit in with what I want to do. He was immediately, in my opinion, alienating him, and in a way that I even thought at the time, he's going to come in and make a power move and force this guy out to show he's in charge. You could see it coming a mile away that he wanted to do that. So I'm interested in your take on that. And for me, that was a bit of a silly move, but that didn't set himself up for success. But that's just my take on it.
Yeah, I think it was it was an ego thing. He was trying to come in, establish who is in charge. And also, even before the thing with Ronaldo, even the transition with Ralph Ragnick, I don't think he handled that transition well, because what Ralph Ragnick was saying, like at the end of his tenure, that United needed open heart surgery and stuff like that, those were pretty valid points, and I don't think he even took that into consideration. I think he had maybe, what's the word, overinflated ego of his own capabilities or something, or did not understand the gravity of what needed to be done at United. But most Dutch managers, even I think they have too much of an ego. Most Dutch managers. But having said that, I don't feel, given the context and how United have been in the past 10 years since Sir Alex left, you can't consider his entire tenure as a total disaster when you compare him with other managers that have managed in that period. Granted that United, you don't judge United as other regular clubs. We are the biggest club in England, so the standard of being a United manager are quite high. So, but if you compare him to, let's say, I don't want to say his name, but let's say Arteta. Let's say Arteta. in the past 6 years, what has he won?
Well, he's won the FA Cup, obviously, and the COVID Cup. He's I would say that I think I can speak for myself as an Arsenal supporter, and I think that most supporters would agree that we were in a pretty bad spot when he took over compared to our previous levels. Even looking at how we had dipped from the last time we won in 03-04, won the title. Obviously we went through a long period of still kind of being around Champions League, not winning. But then we dipped even further, especially after Wenger left. Once that last season under Wenger and when he left, we really dipped to a new low, I think.
So that's the point I'm trying to make. Exactly what you're saying. If you compare Arteta tenure in the first 3 years when he started,
it's relatively similar. It's relatively similar.
Yeah. So that's my point I'm trying to make. So it's not like Ten Hag has been completely bad. And also, you guys have to remember the current environment in United. I think whichever coach comes in, the environment is not suited for you to succeed.
Exactly on this point, I'm looking at some of his stats overall for Ten Hag, and it's loss percentage. He's second only to Ten Hag or to Moyes in terms of loss percentage. He had 85 league matches. Moyes obviously only had 34. He had much less. He's got the second highest loss percentage in the Premier League era. Yeah, I mean, it does not looking great, honestly. He's got almost the same
holistically, but you need to take it season by season. My benchmark for Ten Hag at United is his first season. After his first season, something went wrong.
But this is the thing, Tom. I think what you're saying is absolutely correct. The problem isn't in the manager. You see this with every Manchester United manager when they come in. Right now, Ruud van Nistelrooy is there. They scored 5 goals. You'll see United go on a 5-10 game run where they'll win and they'll have an amazing season. Whichever, now Amorim, I think he signed today. He'll come in and it will happen. The problem with United has been the first season with the new manager, Ole, Ten Hag, Jose, all of them have been really good. Then second season, some things don't work. Third season, they get fired. And either it is the way the club is being run, which we don't know a lot about from the inside information, but this tends to happen all the time. But I think we should look at some stats though. And let me give you this for context, okay? So because now Amorim has signed. So because before Ten Hag came in, he was the top manager in Eredivisie, took Ajax team all the way to almost Champions League glory. Good manager. I think we can all agree he has tactics. He knows how to play with players, maybe ego here and there. We agree with that. Same thing with Amorim right now. So if you look at the data for 23-24 season, and you see, you put all 5 European leagues, Primeira Liga in Portugal and Eredivisie together, Sporting, points-wise, they're second. If you put below Manchester City, I think. Goals-wise, second. Expected goals, fourth. Passes into the final 1/3, like fifth in the whole of them. Build-up attacks, 12th. Possession, 12th. Touches in the opposition box, 9th, right? Now, if you see this with the United side, goals-wise, United were 63rd. Expected goals, 39th. Passes into the final 1/3, they were about 73rd. Build-up attacks, 32nd. Possession, 51st. We know like they weren't really holding the balls well. Touches in the opposite box, they're 22nd. Points-wise, 48th. If you put all of them together, 5 European leagues, Primeira Liga, Eredivisie, United performed. We must agree these are not good stats. But I want to get your opinion on this, because I think like we know it's probably not all of Ten Hag's fault. And if we are talking about managers coming in, let's say Amorim comes in, what lessons could we learn from last season's Ten Hag for Amorim?
I don't think, let me just say this. The only constant we've had in United, let's say in the past 4 or 5 seasons, we've had different managers, but the only constant are the players. When are we going to start blaming the players? As a coach, you can go into the training ground, set up your team, set up your game plan, but if the players are unable to execute to the level that is required of them, I don't think the blame should squarely be on the coach. Ten Hag did not overnight become a bad manager.
Yeah.
So some of the stats, I think I blame the players, not executing or translating what's happening on the training field.
Right.
And also partly to the environment around United and around the recruiting at United.
So on this point about the players, I agree. And a lot of these players are still there from Van Gaal, Mourinho, Solskjaer, et cetera. But there is a large chunk of this squad that is now clearly Erik ten Hag players he's brought in. And that's kind of a point you were making earlier, where maybe some of his biggest mistakes are the recruitment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty easy to see with a player like Antony that was a huge mistake. Maybe if they had paid 25 million for him, we wouldn't be having these same discussions about him, but they paid way over the odds for him. And when you look at the fact that like they signed him, they've got all these other former Ajax players, but then somehow Mohamed Kudus and Edson Alvarez end up at West Ham when those two were much better than the players that went to United from Ajax. So it's like what the decision making on that front from both Ten Hag and the club were very poor and have unfortunately led to a lot of this outcome as well.
And I also think that with modern day football, the transfer strategy now should not be based on the manager. I think that's where United have been getting it wrong with successive manager. And because now, even with Ruben Amorim coming in, this is going to be a big challenge.
Mm-hmm.
A big challenge for him in terms of personnel. Because most of the players that are in United now, we are not driven by like a long-term vision of what the club wants. I feel like they were driven on the short-term or medium-term vision of the coach. And most top clubs now, in Europe are not operating in that way.
It's all
There
a
is a
project,
set
right?
structure.
It's all a
Yeah.
project, long term, like, yeah.
Yeah, because normally now most clubs, they set like a profile, the type of profile, the type of players they want, and they recruit along those lines, irrespective of the manager. And Slot at Liverpool. Yeah.
I agree with what you said, and it begs a further question. Dash, hopefully I'm not stepping on a question that you're planning to ask without getting too much into these stats here. But like, so obviously this can't all be down to Ten Hag, because we've seen, like, this is like Groundhog's Day for the last 4 or 5 managers, pretty much every manager since Ferguson. I think probably the most successful one under that time period would probably have to be Mourinho, winning the Europa League and, like, you know, finishing a bit higher up the table, closer to first place. And also just looking at Ole as well. But Ole didn't win a trophy, so I'm putting Mourinho a little ahead of him. But yeah, so I'm just wondering, like, if what your thoughts are, Tom, on the timing of this for like Ineos in particular, having come in and taken over football operations. Why would they not have parted ways with him this summer? And why would they spend another 200 million pounds on players that, like, he wanted, basically? They're former players of his. Like, why? That just seems like, it just seems so obvious that he wasn't going to last this full season. And like we're all sitting here saying, like, there's no way he's going through this season. And then they bring in these other, like, now they don't have funds for this summer, for this January, and they're having to spend a lot more money to get rid of Ten Hag than they would have if they parted ways in the summer. So it's like, it's not all down to Ten Hag. That's a poor management decision.
Yeah, but if I was in Ineos' position, I would have kept Ten Hag. Why would I have kept Ten Hag? One, who would you have replaced him? Do you think the replacement that you wanted at that time, do you think you would assess whether what you are going to get, is it better than what we currently have?
They tried to replace him and couldn't. So that shows you that I don't know why I guess they couldn't get Amorim then. I don't know. I heard something that his buyout clause is cheaper now than it was in the summer. I'm not sure if that's true, but
that's one point. Another point is as well, it's United have had the past 3-4 managers. They have been great managers. Louis van Gaal was a good manager. Jose Mourinho, serial winner. He's a good manager. He started really well. That's how he got the job. They brought in Ragnick. Ragnick came with a big reputation. So looking at that, I'm sure Ineos during their review would have seen, okay, we've had successive, like, really good managers. What's been the one factor these managers have not had? A proper footballing structure for them to work on. So I think that was the rationale behind them saying, okay, let's give him the structure and allow him to do one season. And giving him the structure and allowing him to continue was not enough, because he also, with the players, needed to consolidate, like, his authority, like, to show the players that he's going to be here in the long term. Because sometimes players, when they think that in the next 6 months or let's say 3 months, the coach will be gone, they're down tools. Sometimes they do it unconsciously. When they think that the manager is not going to be here, let's say, in the next 6 months. That's why I think they renewed his contract.
Right. But
also, you need to allow the club to also address issues when they know that things are going bad. I commend them, because this is not ideal for them to be firing the manager in the middle of the season, not having enough time to vet who is coming in. But also, this tells you they during the summer they were also vetting candidates. Because
not just betting, they were now going. They weren't just betting; they were attempting to replace him pretty strongly.
Yes, depending, looking at how quickly they went. From Ineos, I understand why they allowed Ten Hag to continue.
Right.
I understand the rationale behind why they allowed Ten Hag to continue.
And to like address your point earlier is like, you're right that they didn't have the modern like structure of a club set up, and that's why they brought in Dan Ashworth to become their sporting director, you know.
Yeah.
And that's still a very new process for him, but that's where it's like I guess you just would have hoped, like, maybe if you're a United fan, ideally you would have hoped, like, okay, identified Ruben Amorim in the summer, made that happen in the summer, so you could have given him the preseason and given him a chance to bring a couple players in. When, I don't know, I just keep falling back on the point of like, it just seemed like there was no possible way that Ten Hag was going to make it through this season, like, at least to me and a lot of people I've spoken to, and we're not like inside football people at this level. That's just like the eye test of looking at how the team is performing and looking at, you know, what typically happens to managers when teams are performing like that, especially at such a big club. So I guess maybe it was just like part of the problem was that, you know, the takeover from Ineos was still pretty fresh. I think Ashworth was like just in the door when that was happening, so maybe it was just bad timing. But it just seems that they've botched all of this. Like, it took so long for Ineos to take over, and like they just seem to like be so slow moving on making these big decisions, and it just keeps shooting themselves in the foot. We're at the point of this season is like, I don't want to say it's gone. It's not gone yet, but like there's a huge uphill battle now to get anything out of this season. You know what I mean? So like,
max is top 6.
It's just like, all these decisions are just too little too late all the time, it seems.
Yeah, but that was a calculated risk I think they needed to take. Ten Hag did not become a bad manager overnight.
I just don't think he was ever up to the level of being.
No, but all the stats that Desch was reading about Ruben Amorim when Ten Hag was with Ajax, if you go and check his stats, those were identical.
But I think that one point you have to accept with those is that, like, okay, yeah, you can aggregate all the big 5 leagues and stack people up, but certain leagues should be weighted heavier with how difficult. The Premier League is a much more difficult league.
Yes, but Ten Hag's Ajax team was performing well in Europe. In the Champions League, they were
every year. Not every year.
Yeah, but relative. No. And also, I think I saw a stat about his win percentage. When we hired Ten Hag, his win percentage is even higher than what Ruben Amorim wins percentage is now.
Absolutely true.
Yeah, so I think given those numbers, those were some of the data Ineos was working around, and with the idea that the environment at United has not been ideal for a coach to succeed. So I think those were some of the things they were thinking. That's why they made that.
And then
let me ask something.
You combine that with him coming in with a little bit of maybe weird ego stuff that didn't help him. He's not very good with the media. So all these things piled more pressure on him than was necessary when it was already going to be massive pressure. You know what I mean? So he didn't do himself any favors with his own behavior, and maybe also partially with, like, unfortunately for him, like, I don't think that he's always able to articulate himself in English exactly how he's trying to, which is like not his fault. So I think that is also a factor. Like, I'm just saying, like, I've seen interviews where I've been like, I don't like think that the way that the media is reacting to what he said is actually how he like meant that exact statement. But when you come in and you oust guys like Ronaldo, who's like he's the last guy who's won the Ballon d'Or for your club. Like, he's a club legend, you know? I mean, to me, that type of move is just not a good move. And then he pulled it with Sancho as well, who's obviously nowhere near as much of any type of a fixture at United. Maybe he should have started with that reversed. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I think, like, I wanted to go back a little bit. Like, absolutely. Like, I think Erik, it's all about PR. Like, especially when you're in Manchester United coaching position, you're kind of like auditioning to be also this, you know, like the top PR person, like you need to be likable or be able to pull off a Fergie or Jose, like kind of like be able to handle the media quite well. But absolutely, like going back to what you were saying, Tom, about Ten Hag having like Ruben Amorim's kind of like stats and things, which is absolutely true. I also think probably United didn't go for Amorim because at that time, I think Liverpool were also scouting Amorim for before they hired Slot. I think
Bayern.
there was also talk of Bayern, and also how much of it is true, I don't know. But also like there was a rumor that Pep would probably step out, or so they were also in the hunt. Clearly, like every club going after Amorim is a good sign, but when there's more competition, it looks like United don't win these competitions anymore, like in the back in the day. That is also one thing. Second thing for me is very crucial is that like what you're saying about the club culture, Tom, in terms of like it's not always the manager's fault. But you do trust, like first, like they were firing people like crazy, so they wanted to give it Ten Hag a little bit more time, which makes sense. But then now you're stuck with like 3 or 4 signings that Ten Hag made last season or like in the summer. And now Amorim comes in, he wants to bring 2 or 3 players of his own. Doesn't fit the style of play maybe of the manager, but this is completely opposite of like clubs that are run well. Like for example, when Liverpool buys players this day, I'm not saying like they don't make mistakes, they do, but they tend to get majority of their signings right. And then when Klopp decides to leave, Slot comes in and they have a player profile that fits with the manager profile, right? So I think this is like what I was getting from your point, Tom, like was like clearly like the problem isn't in the manager. Clearly there is like something that has to be thought of in terms of the United club level. And we know from the history of Glazers, this was never the priority, or didn't seem like a priority, at least from the outside. Ineos coming in, high hopes. Do you see this happening over next couple of seasons or next couple of transfer windows? Actually, Ineos making decisions, does this give you any hope? Let's say, like, does it give you enthusiasm as a Manchester United supporter?
Yes, actually, it does. And some of the initial appointments they made in terms of hiring the director of football and the new chief executive and chief transfer strategist or something. And these are people who comes in with like big reputation of actually being best in class at what they do. So that gives me hope. And also a couple of signings also they made over the summer, not just the ones with Zaxi and I don't know who else we signed, like the
Delict,
young
Mazraoui,
French.
Lenny Yoro.
Yeah, the young
signing. That's
Lenny
unbelievable.
Yoro.
Lenny Euro. I think Lenny Euro was more of like a club signing.
That was a good signing.
Yeah,
That's been very unlucky. That's been an unlucky one for the injury in preseason.
yeah. So signing like that, and also there is a young midfielder. I think it's a young Malian midfielder the sign and that went straight to the reserve or the academy. That tells me that there is structure in place that's thinking long term. Even with
I think y'all also signed the Arsenal Academy forward who was absolutely like smashing goals. They were like crazy.
Yeah. So those type of signing that they are doing in and around the first team and the reserve tells me they are thinking the long term.
No,
and also
just on that point before you go on, I remember in our group chat we were all talking over the summer like, hey, this looks a lot better. Like these signings look a lot better. Like it hasn't panned out well this season, but that was what we thought during the summer when they were making these signings. Like for me, like I know that Xerxes is taking a lot of bad criticism right now, but like he was one of the best attacking players in Europe last season, like in terms of creating chances and certainly in terms of a young player. Like he was a huge part in Bologna qualifying for the Champions League. I don't know whose signing that was, like from the United front, or if he's necessarily a good fit for y'all, but he would be a very good fit at a lot of clubs.
Yeah.
Actually, I did not understand Xerxes signing. I did not actually understand Xerxes signing because he's not a number nine. He's not a number nine that you say will come and compete with
He's more like a 10.
Højlund. He's more like a 10, but in the 10 position, Bruno Fernandes is there. You have Mason Mount there. So you are just bringing in squad players that are not like going to affect or change anything.
If you're telling me a choice between Mason Mount or Xerxes, I'm going with Xerxes. That's me.
But also, like, I think
I had just a second. I had an interview. I think it was maybe Fabio Capello discussing about Xerxes.
I heard this too.
Struggles. Yeah, struggles in the Premier League. You have to remember that the Serie A is quite different from the Premier League in terms of the intensity and.
I think you get a little more time on the ball. Like, there's more low block that you're going against.
Exactly. So that's also saying that he's one of the top strikers playing in Serie A is quite different. And also you need to look at the style of play at United. Maybe he's not in the right environment for them to utilize his ability to the fullest.
But that is what I was going to say, though. I mean, we're talking about Xerxes, who likes to drop back, like he likes to hold the ball, he wants to pass it, and then make the runs, late runs, and score goals. Look at a couple of signings before that. Wow, Weghorst, and forget the guy, but like he was in, like everybody loves him. Completely lost him, but he was in Watford. Then went to Igalo, right? Like look at them. Like just they take both of them as example. They were number 9, but what they were doing there were like they're trying to set up the wingers all the time, right? And Xerxes is a little bit like that, but he drops a little bit deeper. So I was going to ask, like, what is it because of the Ten Hag's play? Maybe that they went for Xerxes because he's different than maybe Højlund, for example. Højlund likes to be near the goalpost, hold the ball, and shoot. But Xerxes likes to come deeper. Is it that? Maybe?
If you look at Ten Hag's, like his first season with United, and even his Ajax team, Xerxes is not a typical Ten Hag. No. Ten Hag likes a proper centre forward. When he was at Ajax, he used Sebastian Haller. When he came to United his first season, he had Weghorst.
Yeah.
So those are like point strikers. Now, when he wanted to like find a striker, he went for Rasmus Højlund. So if you look at his profile of striker, Xerxes is not his sort of striker. So why was he signed?
So for you, like he's not,
No, his style of the way Ten Hag plays football, I don't think suits Xerxes.
It doesn't at all. The game, the way Ten Hag has been playing, at least with United, there's no it's just going to go past Xerxes all the time, and they're going to like bypass him every time. Yeah.
But that's also like, for example, what Ten Hag himself said, right? Like he said himself that he's not going to play the Ajax style at United because he doesn't have players to play that style.
Right? I think he wants to. He would want to, ideally, though.
He would want to ideally play that, right? But then this brings me back to the question. Then, like, if it is not Ten Hag style of play and Ten Hag is there, then is the club making like Xerxes signing because they have long-term project in mind?
Maybe because of just hype and the fact that he was a hot young player. Maybe, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like a buzz signing almost.
Yeah, I mean, I like him as a player. He's a different player. He's not a classic number 9. I like him as a player, but but I don't know,
right, like Tom, you're right. Like, oh, sorry, Dash, but you're right. Like Bologna's style of play in their formation is actually very unique. Like Thiago Motta has a very, very unique formation that he likes to play that it suited Xerxes really well, and that's probably partially because okay, we have I think that's more of a case of like a manager creating a formation that actually suits his squad versus like coming in with like, here's my style of play and everybody here is going to have to fit into that. That's at least the way I looked at it, because if you look at the way Malta's doing it at Juventus, he's like adapting the formation a bit each time to find the primary like setup for the players he has each match.
So me, I find it really weird for managers who goes to a club and say, okay, this is a fixed way or fixed
You
formation.
can't do that. You have to go with what it actually works with the players, right? I mean,
yeah, because your philosophy is not going to change, but the way you implement your philosophy, that's what's going to change. You understand? Your basic philosophy of how you want to play football is always going to remain that. But the formation and the personnel, how you are going to implement your philosophy, that's what's always changing. And it's quite, I don't think it's the right way for most managers to go, okay, this is the set way I'm going to play.
Yeah, unless you have a squad that City has built very intentionally to make it that you can plug all these guys into the system, then maybe you can do it. But like, if you're coming into a club, like, I mean, think about it, man.
Yeah,
like,
but-
just from one game
but-
to the next,
but even-
what happens if you have an injury? Then you have to adjust the formation slightly, right? I mean,
and also like
but
United
even-
isn't that. You know, like just to give you one example, I mean, like Juan Mata, top player at the time when they bought him, he's kind of like a player who needs like somebody to do one two passes and then create play. He isn't a Manchester United player. Like he would have been better in somewhere else. I think every time United buys that kind of player, I think that is coming from wishful thinking that this player will fit in and we can build a team around them. But they don't have time to do that at United. Maybe other clubs they do, but they don't.
Yeah, but even with City, Guardiola is very good at that, to make subtle changes to his team. He always changed his style of play with the type of players here. The City team of, let's say, 2017, when they have like Leroy Sané and maybe Riyad Mahrez, it's not the same City team that we are seeing now. So even him, though the philosophy remains the same, but how he's implementing the philosophy changes with the profile of players he has.
Right.
And that's always how a good coach should always do it.
yeah, that's just basics of coaching, I think. I mean, any sport, honestly. But like, that's exactly what something we spoke about a few weeks ago. Dash and I was like, you see the style, the general philosophy is the same with Guardiola, but now that he has that top number 9 with Haaland, like, they've adapted the way they play a little bit to suit him, having him in their team, which of course is it's a lot different than being more winger oriented when you had like Sané, Mahrez, where like a lot of the goals were coming out of the wings, a lot more goals than are now coming out of the wings, you know, whereas now they have a guy who's going to score 35 goals a season in the league or whatever, you know, like maybe not that every time, 25 to 30.
Even the way they transition from defense to attack, it's with the way City transition now, it's so different from how they did when they have, let's say, Leroy Sané, who could sprint 30 meters. Now, it's when they have, let's say, Bernardo Silva or maybe Phil Foden now. And it's going to change as well now when they have Doku and Savino.
Very different.
So Pep is constantly tweaking how he's setting up his team, constantly tweaking how he's setting up.
Well, let me ask you something on this point then. How do you view Ten Hag as a coach when you're saying, like, do you think he's a guy who came in and had his rigid system in mind and tried to implement that regardless of the players, or do you view him differently, like where he was actually trying to make the subtle tweaks to formations? Because for me, it's actually quite hard to tell what his exact style of play was attempted to be, because it ended up just being like sit back, counterattack, because kind of more so down to the fact that other teams were dominating a lot of games against them. That's at least the way I view it. But what's your take on Ten Hag on that front?
I think at the initial stage, that's when he had his initial success, the first season. The first season he came, I think the football was not, but it was way better than his final.
If you fast forward 2 months into that season, and then for the remainder or whatever, like that was probably the best period. Like, because he had a bit of a rough start, and then they leveled it out and finished well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the way he was playing that season, he played with basically two number eights. He had Eriksen and Bruno playing as two number eights. Then he had Casemiro as the pivot. And I think that worked out quite well. When the team was building up, it was more like let's say like a 3-6-1 with Casemiro in the middle and the fullback are all pushed up. I don't know where he went wrong. Maybe it's Luke Shaw. Blame Luke Shaw. Because his system completely changed after the first season. Now I can't even recognize what we are doing. We are trying to play from the back whenever they pass the ball to Andre Onana. It takes like maybe 5 seconds, then launches the ball to to the winger and we lose the ball. Then it's attack against defense again. So I think his philosophy completely changed. And one of the reasons also was he maybe trying to adapt. Trying to adapt to what? I don't know. He was trying to adapt to something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dash, any final questions from you before we wrap up here on this analysis of Ten Hag's United?
Yeah, I think I kind of feel bad for the guy because I do think he's a very good coach. I think it's the system. But I'd like to end it with a very simple question for you, Tom. So you have I think 3 games until Amorim formally takes over. I think Ruud takes in charge of those games. In the meantime, the Amorim comes in. What do you think, or what direction do you think the United will go? Like just basic predictions, so like of you, what you think, how the United will end the season, Premier League wise, trophy wise, ballpark figure. What do you think?
I think from now to the end of the season, there will be a resurgent United. We'll probably have a bit of consistency, then maybe have a little dip, then some consistency. We'll finish in and around in the top 8. I think United will finish in the top 8. But from now to the season, I don't think the club should use this period or the coach should use this period isolatedly to evaluate the players, because we've seen this before. We've seen it with Ole, we've seen it with Ten Hag coming in. Like, they go for like stretches, let's say 6 months, they can be consistent, but after this first new manager bomb, then it's nothing. So this initial thing, I expect the team to feel that the manager has been sacked. They want to do well, they want to impress the fans, and they want to give the impression that it's been the manager all along. I think that was
That
was the point they made in the Leicester game. Look at Casemiro. Casemiro has not been able to run for the last 18 months. All of a sudden, he's everywhere. So I don't think they should use this season. They should, if they are trying to evaluate the squad and the standard of players, they should use the entirety of Ten Hag's tenure.
They've already shown what they got.
What about for FA Cup? What about like FA Cup, Carabao Cup, Europa League? Yeah. How do you think United will finish there?
Those are cup competitions. Those are cup competitions. And the past 10 years, United have been doing well in cup competitions. So I won't be surprised for United to, let's say, in one of those cup competitions to go to the semi-final or final. And when you go to the semi-final or final, anything can happen. I won't be surprised. But I think my final point will make Ian happy. A top team, you can only judge a top team based on the league, based on their league form. Don't quote me on that.
We got you on.
We will hide it from them.
This is recorded. This is going on social media.
based on their league form. That's how you assess the level of the team, because their league form shows how consistent they have been for a period of time, and that's what you want. Whereas in the cup, you only have to be good for 3, 4, 5 games.
Yeah, you've seen Wigan won the FA Cup and got relegated in the same seasons.
Yeah,
it happens. Yeah.
Also, favorable draw plays a key point in that as well. Look at United going to the FA Cup final. It's because we had who did we play in the semi-final? Was it Coventry or
Coventry?
Yeah, and we almost bottled that.
Yeah. But Coventry were in a very good form, though. Like that's
They were.
They were.
Now they're in the bottom of the championship.
They can't sustain. I mean, that is a problem, and I think like that's also the thing. I think United on paper still have a really good squad. Like, I mean, we can talk about players and everything. I think they're still.
Do we really?
I think they have around an 8th place squad. Honestly, I think that's where.
I don't think we have a really good squad on paper. I don't think even.
No,
I don't think.
How many of our players, even on paper now, would you think would be an automatic shoo-in in any of the top 4 clubs?
Not many.
Let's not judge them by this season. Or
we're not. We're judging them by the West.
No, even with last season, I don't think. First of all, Bruno Fernandes, I don't think he should be the captain of United. And I don't think going forward, for me, if United want to compete in the Premier League and in the Champions League, Bruno Fernandes can't be your best player. He can't be your best player and the leader of the team. You can't win anything with Bruno Fernandes as your best player and leader of the team. I think that's one of the mistakes Ten Hag made. Bruno Fernandes can be your best supporting player, but he can't be the most important and the leader of your team.
Yeah, he doesn't really seem to have those leadership characteristics you need to be a captain at that level of the game.
No.
No. But on a given day, when Bruno is playing, like his heart's out, like remember Ole's time when he first came in and when he was playing and less whining and just trying to make things happen. Quite good player. Right, I think like we're judging him now based on how he's been recently, or like last season and this season. But you like, let's say like the best game he had under Ole. Do you think he makes it into other teams?
He could, but you're talking about 3-4 seasons ago. I mean, the time.
But
he's on form. When he's on form and he's playing well, I think he makes it into some of the. But at that time, I don't think he makes it into Man City team or let's say Liverpool. But I think he would make it into Tottenham or maybe Arsenal's team at that time.
Maybe. At that time, maybe. Yeah.
But I don't think in any of those teams you put Bruno Fernandes in there to be like your main player, your main captain, and your main leader of the team. I don't think they will.
I completely agree with that. Yeah,
and just the rest.
I completely agree with that. Yeah,
like the rest of the squad doesn't have. There's not enough in the rest of the squad. You can say that's the top player, and maybe he goes. You could have said Rashford a couple seasons ago. At this point, nobody would be taking him.
No.
Yeah, but that's the thing I said with Jude Bellingham also. People are using that one good Rashford season as if that's what he has been doing consistent. No. If you look at Rashford since his debut, he has been pretty consistent with his 10 goals a season. That's the sort of striker he is. He's not a 20-goal, 30-goal striker. He's not. So how can United say we want to compete in the Premier League, we want to compete in the Champions League, we are back, and Rashford is your best player, is your main player. Bruno Fernandes is your best player, is your main player. It doesn't make sense. And given the amount of money we have spent in the transfer window, I don't think United are any better off than when Jose took over or left.
No.
The squad is not better.
I absolutely agree. But like the reason I said like they still have a good team on paper is because I can totally still see them like go on a 6, 7, 8 game winning streak, you know? And the consistency, I don't think they will have that over the season. We completely agree with that. But I think they still have this firepower. Like if you look at strikers, they can score goals. They've not been scoring. That's a different thing. But on paper, like Højlund was one of the most promising talent. Xerxes, one of the most promising talent. Defender-wise, you have De Ligt, new signing. I don't think I trust Maguire there, but Lisandro when he's fit is
De Ligt is mostly reputation.
Yeah, you don't think
Matthias De Ligt
that level?
Yeah, he has not proved he's a top defender since he was retired.
I wouldn't put him like in, let's say, like top 4 or 5 teams in Premier League, but if you put
but he has not proved he has not proved that in all the moves he has made. So in Juventus, in Bayern, I don't think he has proved that he's a really, really, really top centre back. Our opinion of him is still based on when he just came into the scene at Ajax with Rasmus Højlund. All we are talking about now is potential, talent. It's not like when we signed him in Serie A, he has been scoring consistently. He was not. I think he had just broken into the first team there, and he had just had like one proper full season with Atalanta. I might be wrong, or that's not the case.
No, I think you're right. That was one of his. I think he had maybe had some minutes before, but yeah, that was really his first season. He broke in. He had maybe 11 goals, something like that. So he's never been a guy who scored really more than that.
Yes. So if we think that,
but I mean, he's been playing well for Denmark, for example.
Yeah.
Go on, Desh.
For example, like he does well with whenever he plays for Denmark. Like I think in a different setting he's doing well. But this is also the argument that, for example, Pogba when he was playing for United, he was always playing really good for France, but he wasn't playing for thing. But I don't know. Like I think is it the setting or is
the main
it
difference with
Pogba there?
Pogba had already been an excellent player at club level, and Højlund really has never been that. He was an exciting prospect in one season.
Yeah, he's a prospect.
United broke the bank to bring him in.
Yeah. So that's why I think right now I can't say we have like a really good proven squad on paper. Most of the players we have these are based on reputation at the moment. Even Bruno, our best player, he has not been good for at least a season now. At least.
I think he was really good the season at United before Ronaldo came. He was really, really good. And then at that time, we were saying that, he's going to link up with Ronaldo quite well. But then when the Ronaldo came, his game dropped. And he's never been
the same
that level, I think.